The White Sox face a daunting challenge, rebuilding their team while regaining the fans' trust.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the fan side of the network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, I was at Wright Field yesterday for Podcast Row, and one of the things that came up was the organization saying they want to try to build trust back up with the fan base, and I want to discuss how that can happen in the first segment. Then I want to discuss something that surprised me during the Padres series over the weekend. And finally, let's wrap up with a weekly Minor League Monday report. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, so hopefully you got a chance to tune in to yesterday's special live episode that I had on the YouTube channel. Was down at Wright Field. They kind of did a podcast row. It's something that the public relations staff was piloting, so hopefully we get to do more of those. I do apologize for the audio issues. I have no idea what happened. My buddy Beznek Security, hopefully I pronounced his name again. My buddy Bez from OnTapSportsNet.com, he came down to help me out. We tested everything prior, sounded fine, so I'm not sure why it burned so hot. So that's why I also didn't save it and share it as a podcast form, because the audio just burned really hot, but I apologize for that. It's part of the pilot. We're trying to work some things out. Hopefully they'll do this again next year. I really, really do hope that they do that. Huge thank you to Bez for helping me out. Huge thank you to Colin and Scotty from White Sox PR. A big, big thank you to Connor McKnight from CHSN for taking the time out to talk with us, and Michael Downey, the Director of Marketing and Promotions, for also giving us his time. It was just awesome. And the reason why I mentioned those four in the White Sox organization is those are White Sox employees. And my first impression of meeting all four of those guys, and I truly mean this, and it's not because they granted me access or gave me the time of day, but all four came across as genuinely good, smart people. So gracious and accommodating and fun people too. You know, it was a great time. We all had fun. Sox Machine was down there. From the 108 guys were down there. Sox on 35th was down there. Future Sox was down there. CHGO White Sox was there. We all got, it was nice to see a lot of people that I've interacted with and had on this show live and in person, get to shake some hands, hang out. Just a great, great time. And I even got to briefly interact with Brooks Boyer, basically the second in charge of the White Sox and basically in charge of the business. And he came across as just a fun and just a good dude. And I'm not doing this to suck up or defend the White Sox. I am actually bringing this up because I'd always heard that the White Sox had good people in the organization. And, they've earned, with all the stuff that happened in the last rebuild, the scrutiny was deserved. But I witnessed it. I witnessed it firsthand that they've got genuinely good people, good human beings from my interaction working for them. And I thought that was refreshing because every one of them too, the biggest thing that was so refreshing was every one of them acknowledged, this organization has to rebuild its trust with its fan base. And they're trying. They get it. And it got me thinking when, I still heard a sell the team chant because I stayed, stuck around after the game. Bez and I took it in. Watched about half of it from the 108 section, which was awesome. And I just wanted to watch it in that section because it's, become such an iconic section. And I like hanging out with Beef Loaf and My Sox Summer and Teresi, although Teresi went to Riot Fest. Shout out, thank you for the pizza to the 108 guys. But there was still a sell the team chant after Michael A. Taylor struck out to end the seventh inning. And I just got me thinking, man, this is a big lift for the organization. They still have a lot of ways to go to fully rebuild the trust. And, I was reflecting on how could they also do that? Because they talked about it, but what would be some ideas for them to get there as I was driving back? Because, I was stuck in traffic on the way back. And the first thing is, I believe that they need to do next year, that they have to continue it, the Friday night all access broadcast. And I know Bez talked about it yesterday. it's a great way to have a special broadcast worth consuming. It's kind of that island game, as Connor talked about on yesterday's show. And maybe try some other things broadcast wise. Because again, just try to figure some other things out to make some of your broadcasts seem to stand out. It doesn't have to be every broadcast, but just kind of, hey, we're trying to make sure when you watch a White Sox game, whether it's on television, you're going to get a unique experience. And I also think, again, trying to just build the community. Come on out. You're going to be amongst your peers, your friends. When you come to the ballpark, instead of doing kids can play, you're part of the community. In that way, you're kind of part of the team. You're going to have some fun. Because I had a great time. I haven't been to a White Sox game in 10 years. Had a blast. So much fun. And a hot dog was actually $7. And I know the markup could still be a little high, but I've seen other places where it's way more expensive. And the food is still just as good. So yeah, start tapping into that stuff. But secondly, get the good people that you have in the organization out in front of the microphone more. Guys, I'm telling you, Michael Downey, and I'm not saying this because we're fellow MU alums, but I saw a genuinely authentic person, a lot of genuine authenticity in him. And he seems dedicated to really listening to you, the fan. And he told us the marketing folks, they read your feedback. So if there's a survey, fill it out. They're going to do their best to see what they can do. But he seems committed, for example, to put together a great promotional schedule that if you're going to come out, hey, you're going to get this. That type of stuff. And Brooks Boyer, I know some of his comments about Jason Benetti's departure and keeping John Triffin has rubbed some folks the wrong way. But at the same time, I think he is trying, because this is a guy that's basically been trying to clean up Jerry Reinsdorf's verbal messes pretty much his entire tenure. And think about it. Kids Can Play is a direct result of, if anybody thinks the White Sox can catch the Guardians, is crazy. The white flag trade. That was a huge, huge PR nightmare. The attendance just craters. And what does Brooks do? Creates a lot of promotional nights, a lot of promotional ideas. And then, he keeps getting better people in there. So get these guys on for the mic more. Let's hear more from Michael Downey. Those types of people. And I do think, at least on the business and marketing side, he's trying like crazy to rebuild the trust that was so badly damaged by Jerry, Kenny, and Rick, because you never knew who was in charge. And I think that's the biggest thing that they can try now, start to maybe rebuild some trust. Obviously, he has to execute it, but that there's two people in charge now. On the business side, it's Brooks. On the baseball side, it's Chris Getz. And that's got to be the emphasis. These are the two guys that are in charge. Baseball, business. Now, like it or not, Getz is running things. So the next suggestion to rebuild trust is you got to push Jerry as far back into the room as possible, to where the only thing he even matters, the only thing he'll matter, is he authorizes the budget. That's it. And I know the budget is going to be frustrating probably, because it likely will never get to where you actually need to spend to be a contender. It's basically a self-imposed salary cap. So basically, the next bar that Getz actually has to clear, and what can go a long, long way, is can he evaluate enough talent, sign enough guys within the self-imposed salary cap to win? That would be huge in rebuilding trust, because his predecessor could not. So that's where Getz has a chance to stand out. And, Connor pointed out, he kind of already has. I mean, they're looking for more well-rounded players rather than these flawed star players. And they're building the infrastructure to develop these players. And I feel even more comfortable in trusting them if this rebuild, for example, hire a director of defense. You've already hired a director of hitting. You got a director of pitching. Now get a director of defense. And, I like where the process that they're using in the drafts, Mike Shirley and Getz. So it's like, the final thing that maybe too, the next to rebuild trust is spend the $100 million contract. Even if it's an extension on Kyle Teal or Shane Smith, just show the commitment that you're willing to spend the prime money. And I think that way you can maybe rebuild some trust. Well, something really surprised me over the weekend during the Padres series, and I want to discuss that after the break. This episode is brought to you by Zippix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand to mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. And I know I need to cut down on my coffee and pop intake. So you best believe I'm going to be giving these caffeine toothpicks a try. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com. That's Zippix toothpicks.com. Use code locked on for 10% off your first order. Must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. Again, that's zippixtoothpicks.com. Promo code locked on. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix toothpicks. And caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. And what I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. And you can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. And I need to cut down on my coffee and pop intake. So you best believe I'm going to be switching to 5-hour energy shots because of how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. And also, I can just quickly crack open a 5-hour energy shot to get that boost rather than wait for the coffee to be made. Hey, it's all about efficiency for me. Enough with boring flavorless coffee. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade. With 5-hour energy shots, get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store or online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me, maybe some hope. All right, so the White Sox didn't win the weekend series, even though they actually had a chance yesterday. They could only get RBI walk offense with the bases loaded in the 7th. They just could not get that big hit. And that's why they ended up losing by a run. I mean, they really could have opened that game up, especially against, the Padres have just got a darn good bullpen. And White Sox had their opportunities, and they just could not come up with that big hit. Or they couldn't get wild pitch offense. And again, I'm not against RBI, bases loaded walks, a wild pitch offense, but it was just like, get that hit, and they just couldn't. I know Michael A. Taylor ended an inning where it was like, he was definitely going for RBI walk offense. And it was just like, come on, man, swing that bat, swing it. No, he didn't do that. But that's not what surprised me, because I know hitting with runners in scoring position has been an issue all season. A couple of other things actually shocked me this weekend. Dylan Cease did not show the White Sox what they're missing. And Gavin Sheets, while yes, he did score 2 runs and he drove in 2 runs, I thought he was going to torch his former team, given that they non-tendered him. I thought he was going to rake, because it just seems like every former White Sox player just drills Chicago, especially in their first encounter. And for the most part, that did not happen. Well, Fernando Tatis Jr.'s home run off of Sean Burke ended up being the deciding run. But the one thing I give Rick Hahn credit for during his attempt to rebuild his reputation tour with MLB Network, when he was doing those, appearances during the trade deadline and the couple of podcast things, was it was really hard at the time of the James Shields trade to project Tatis would just be a stud because he was so young and raw. And if you are going to trade scratch-off prospects, at least process-wise, this is my opinion, trade hitting, because the chances of a scratch-off hitter hitting, it's harder. It's much harder to hit these days, obviously. Don't trade pitching, because the chances are better that a pitcher could hit. Because again, if you got the raw tools, you usually can construct pitches to get them to the majors. Don't trade an 18-year-old pitcher for Cam Boozer. I'm just saying, trade hitting. So it wasn't that crazy. But especially with Cease, I was fully expecting Cease to throw like 7 innings of one-run ball like Carlos Rodon did this year or Chris Sale last year, even though Sale lost 1-0 last year in that makeup doubleheader. One of the few games where it was like, hey, there's Luis Robert Jr., that type of stuff. I was really expecting that. Instead, Cease goes 6 innings, gives up 4 runs, including a 2-run shot to Miguel Vargas, walks 3, and strikes out 6. That I did not have on my bingo card. I thought it was going to be 7 innings of shutout ball, and I know Cease has been struggling, but his past 2 starts going into the game was indicating, hey, maybe there's Cy Cease still there. And his ERA is now 4.64, and he looks like 2023 Cease, the guy that we basically traded away. Not the 2022 or 2024 version of Cease. And it makes you wonder, has he gone from a $200 to $300 million pitcher? Bez and I were talking about that during the game. Basically to a 3-year deal pitcher with, that 1-year opt-out type deal. Because he just looks shaky. He doesn't look like he's in full command of his pitches. He basically looks like the guy you saw in 2023. And in this case, in 2023, one of the reasons why he had a high ERA was he just had a bad defense behind him. I think his FIP was still like 2.52. And I don't think, see, Dylan Cease, Fangraphs, uno momento. But I just don't think it's one of those things where it was like 2023 where he had the decent FIP. Yeah, he's got a 3.64 FIP. Where in a lot of teams in 2025 or 2024 going into the offseason still saw a potential ace because he had a 2.70 FIP. Or no, 3.1 FIP. Actually, no, 3.7. My bad. But he had 3.72 FIP as I was looking up. I thought I had it in my notes. That's why I had to do the quick audible there. But he doesn't look as sharp or as dominant. Now, he's still going to have value on the market with, 5 straight 200 Ks. And Ks are still valuable, and they're expensive. But you got to wonder, how much is a team going to commit to him? Is he going to get, the Blake Snell type deal still? But Blake Snell is coming off of winning Cy Young, that type of stuff. But is he going to get those, a big-time cash, or is it going to be a smaller deal? And when I was talking to Bez about this too, I was thinking about this. I'm only going to hire Scott Boras as my agent if the current team I'm on, like let's say I was a baseball player, if the current team that I was on is either just not offering me an extension for whatever reason, or they're really lowballing me, or they immediately say no to the figure that is exchanged back, then yeah, I want Scott Boras to find me the best free agent deal. But with his refusal to sign extensions, I wonder how much money Boras cost Cease after last season. Because now I don't know if San Diego offered him an extension. I didn't see anything, internet-wise. But again, with Boras's reputation that he really doesn't sign extensions, he gets his guys to free agency. I think they were probably like, well, we're just not going to offer him. But Cease probably should have signed an extension because he was coming off a great year. And now this is not the best year to be entering free agency. Because all he can stand on right now is, well, I throw 200 Ks. I can eat up innings. But he's going to be 30. This isn't going to be like it was last year when people were still like, well, he's 28. There's still some bloom on the flower there. There's still some shine there. He's now another, 2 seasons older, basically. And, I just thought, man, Boras may have screwed him on some cash. And then I was sort of worried Gavin Sheets would be looking to make the White Sox pay for giving up on him. Like we saw him hit a walk-off home run in spring training, and I know it was spring training, but he hits a walk-off home run against the White Sox. So I was fully expecting him to crush home runs and, just 2 hits. Obviously, there are RBIs. And he is hitting 258, 323, 443. So 1.6 F4 and 116 WRC plus. So I'm just saying it would have been nice to have his 19 home runs right now instead of, not tendering them because you wanted to have Andrew Vaughn. But hey, Double A Birmingham is playing for the Southern League Championship. How they got there is because of Hagen Smith having a dominant performance last week. Let's discuss how this could be an example of why you should not throw in the towel on him being elite during this week's Minor League Monday report. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There's so many products out there, and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything, and that's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. And I got my hair issues. I mean, see that? That's some hair issues. Definitely going to be giving Nutrafol a try, and I can feel comfortable using Nutrafol because it's NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter promo code Locked On MLB. That's Nutrafol, Nutrafol.com, promo code Locked On MLB. And most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, and if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And I love using Monarch Money to monitor my 401k and Roth IRA as I'd like to retire before I turn, say, 70. My wife loves using Monarch Money because it makes doing the budget so easy and less stressful. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts. This show's available on all major podcast platforms. And make sure to turn on the notifications too, so that way you know when the episodes are posting. If I do surprise live episodes, because yesterday I was like, oh, do I go live? Yeah, let's go live. Let's do it. That type of stuff. So I'm going to try to do some more live episodes throughout the off season as well. I'm trying to think of some other ideas. Feel free to obviously let me know if you've got any suggestions. Trying to build a community here, that type of stuff. And I hope you had a good weekend. Mine was fun. As you can tell, I enjoyed listening to the Bears game on the drive back from Chicago. And by the way, I also drove around Bridgeport because I got down to Wright Field super early. Because you never know how traffic's going to be. So I can finally empathize with my dad about why we always had to leave so early. Although I don't think I'm ever going to be that fanatical about it. But you can never hurt to leave early, obviously. And I drove around and Bridgeport's fine, folks. It's viable if the White Sox want to build their new ballpark there. It sounds like the Fire are going to be the only ones authorized to build on the 78. I'm just saying. It's a great neighborhood. Just saying. Well, I admit I have sort of gone back and forth on my worry with Hagen Smith. And I think I have to admit that maybe I'm getting too caught up in the moment with him. I'm still not a huge fan of the process they used to draft him. I know Connor McKnight called me out yesterday, look at Jack Haglione's number of that. But it's more the process, and I felt like they drafted Garrett Crochet's replacement when the rebuild technically had options to replace Garrett Crochet. You had Noah Schultz and Kai Busch, although his injury is a reason why you should still load up on pitching. But you have Shane Murphy. You have Christian Opper. Like, you still had options to eventually replace Garrett Crochet if you were going to be so heck-bent on trading Garrett Crochet. What the farm system lacked was elite bats. And Connor Griffin, J.J. Weatherholt, Jack Haglione would have all helped there. So that's the only reason why I still think it's not the greatest process. It's not a terrible process. because you can never hurt to load up on pitching. You have a track record of developing left-handed starters, and there's going to be scares along the way. And I think I have to remind myself that it's development. Not all development is linear. Although the other reason why I should stop going back and forth, and I got to stop myself, and feel free to hold me. This was one that you can hold me to. Smith's selection does get mitigated when the team circled back in the second round to take Caleb Bonemer, who, if he stays on this trajectory, can be a stud. Baseball America just named him the White Sox best, basically the prospect of the year. Obviously there's still some stiffness in his game, like Connor McKnight pointed out in yesterday's show, but, and I'm not saying he's going to be there. He's going to be that guy, but I don't remember Frank Thomas or Albert Bell being these twitchy guys, stiff in terms of, obviously they didn't play the field, but, there's the worry of the stiffness at the plate and worry of the stiffness in the field. But I remember Frank Thomas in the beginning, very upright, not a whole lot of twitchiness, that type of stuff. And they all hit a lot of home runs. Again, it's just the example. And yes, I know Frank found a way to add some bounce to his swing, for example. Kind of did that. He would kind of like bounce, that type of stuff. He found a way. And Caleb can still find a way to mature his game. He's still 19. And the other reason it still can turn out to be a good pick for Hagen Smith last year in the 5th overall pick is he threw an amazing game in Game 2 of the Barons Division Series last week. And it was a reminder he can harness dominant stuff. He just has to do it more consistently. But he goes 5 strong with 10 Ks, so the dominance is there. And the nice thing about the Barons advancing to the championship series, although they are now down 1-0 after losing last night, hopefully Hagen gets to pitch for the Barons if they can force a Game 3. And I hope that's the plan. I don't want to see Riley Gowans pitching Game 3 because it's a rotation. I would like to see Tanner McDougal get his 3 innings because it's still to be determined, because this is the nice thing. Again, winning and losing doesn't matter in the minors. Development does. Now, the winning is nice to give them that intangible, but it's all about developing these guys to help you win at the big league level. So I would like to see, even though he's on a pitch limit, Tanner McDougal get another 3 innings of work tomorrow night. And I would like to see Hagen Smith potentially get some more innings, because he lost all that time with that Arizona reset and arm fatigue he had early in the year. That's why one of the reasons why he's going to the Arizona Fall League. And don't expect him to pitch dominant in the Arizona Fall League, because remember, that's more a lot of how the ballpark's set up. It's more hitter focused. There's ball moves a little bit more. But it's just I would like to see those guys get that work. And I would also like to see them force a Game 3 because of extra at-bats for Sam Antonacci and William Bergola. I'd like to see them get 8 more at-bats. And I get it's only 8, but it's 8 more chances for them to see more big league potential caliber pitches. And I'll take it. Now, AAA season is over. That ended over the weekend. That means top 30 prospects per MLB pipeline, such as Peyton Pallette and Jacob Gonzalez, are done. Their seasons are over. Pallette, number 14 prospect, he'll finish with a 4.36 ERA in Charlotte. But remember, he pitches mostly in a hitter-friendly ballpark. So look at the whip, and it was 1.20. So we'll see if he gets added to the 40-man roster, or does the White Sox roll the dice and think he doesn't get picked up in the Rule 5. I say add him, because guys who can throw hard usually get picked up in Rule 5. I think he would get drafted. Gonzalez, a 2023 first-round pick. He's going to end with a 204, 301, 293 slash line and 147 at-bats after getting the promotion to Charlotte. His overall numbers between Birmingham and Charlotte then will be 232, 307, 335, and 8 home runs. Now, remember, he was mostly picked when Kenny and Rick were still in charge, and likely directing Mike Shirley to take guys who could at least make the big leagues. That was what kind of happened towards the end. Just get guys who can get to the big leagues. Just make it. We don't know what their upside is. Can they just get to the big leagues? And seeing him struggle at AAA, I'm not sure how much he's going to help. I mean, I can see him obviously still getting him called up, but I don't know if he will meet that raised floor player standard. I mean, because that's another thing Connor McKnight touched on yesterday's special show. It seems like if they're going to get, they're trying to find more well-rounded guys, but they got to be well-rounded guys that raise the talent floor. Basically, guys that can still be 1.5 to 2 F4 players. And I don't know if Jacob's going to meet that. Now, he does have a record of bouncing back. That's about his only saving grace. but it hasn't been bouncing back to be like amazing to be a first round pick. And obviously, I touched on Jairo Uriarte on Friday's show. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with a weekly mailbag segment. So make sure to send in your questions or comments to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com or leave them at X, formerly Twitter, at Locked On Sox or at Todd J. Dub. And feel free to leave comments about today's discussion on the episode page on YouTube. Also, leave a 5-star review at wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.